Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever paused, maybe when looking at a new appliance or something, and wondered what really drives the price? You know, that refrigerator or maybe a car part you needed?
Mm-hmm.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into something that's quietly but pretty profoundly reshaping the cost and availability of just countless goods around you.
Right.
We're talking about the expanded U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum.
Yeah, this is significant.
You've gathered, well, quite a stack of sources for this deep dive. Everything from official customs and border protection announcements, economic analyses, and even practical guidance for businesses trying to navigate this.
Lot to sift through.
Exactly. Our mission here is to really distill the most important nuggets, the key insights.
Hmm.
We want to cut through the noise so you can be, well, truly well-informed.
Good goal.
Welcome to Logistics Pulse, sponsored by Mothership. Skip the broker to save big on LTL shipments, or deliver same day nationwide.
So the core of what we're exploring is the Trump administration's decision to expand those 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum. They were doubled back in June 2025 and then widened again, taking effect August 18th, 2025, just after midnight ET.
Right, that effective date is crucial.
And here's a really critical point. These duties, they apply to the value of the steel or aluminum content within the products covered, not the value of the entire product itself.
That's a very important distinction. Yeah, it changes the calculations significantly.
It really does. And here's where it gets, I think, really interesting for everyone listening. These aren't just some obscure trade policies floating out there in the ether.
Not at all.
They're directly impacting things like massive wind turbines, critical car parts, but also like the dishwasher in your kitchen, even specialized chemicals that go into coatings.
Yeah.
You're definitely going to want to understand the ripple effects of this.
And what's fascinating from my perspective is just the sheer breadth of this expansion. It now sweeps across, what, over 400 additional product categories?
Over 400, yeah.
So if you're running a business, especially one that relies heavily on metallic inputs, you're suddenly grappling with a whole host of new challenges.
Like what specifically?
Well, volatile pricing, for one,
Mhm.
really complex compliance hurdles, and just this pressing need to completely recalibrate your supply chain.
So it's not just big steel beams anymore.
Oh, far from it. We're talking every day. Consumer packaged goods, think refrigerators, dishwashers, household and industrial stuff too, like fire extinguishers, components for furniture,
Okay.
and definitely heavy industry and transport. The
Yep.
crucial auto parts, EV components are getting hit, heavy-duty truck trailers, even locomotives.
Wow, even locomotives.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop there. Even the chemicals and coatings industry, dealing with specialty chemicals, various plastics, they're now directly affected. Plus energy and infrastructure, you mentioned wind turbines, also industrial cranes.
That list just keeps going.
It does. And it really raises an important question, doesn't it? How does a policy decision like this, which is, ostensibly aimed at revitalizing domestic industries,
Yeah.
how does it actually play out across these incredibly complex global supply chains? And maybe more importantly, what does it ultimately mean for you, whether you're a consumer or running a business?
You've highlighted that sheer breadth. And it just immediately brings us to the huge economic impact these tariffs are having. Our sources seem pretty clear on the scale. Economists are estimating these tariffs now cover imports worth, at least $320 billion?
That's the figure, yeah.
Yeah.
A substantial number.
That's a huge jump from roughly $190 billion before this latest expansion, right?
It is. It's a significant increase in the scope.
And the immediate effect the term economists use is cost push inflationary pressure. Could you maybe break down what cost push inflation actually means for, well, our wallets?
Absolutely. And it's actually pretty straightforward when you boil it down. Think of it like this. The cost of making something goes up.
Okay.
So the price you pay for it eventually goes up too.
Simple enough.
What's happening here is that domestic producers, who we already saw, were facing higher prices for metals. That was pretty clear in July's Producer Price Index, the PPI.
Right, the PPI. That measures what producers are charging.
Exactly. So they're paying more for metals, and now they face less competition from imports because of the tariffs.
Ah, okay. Double effect.
Right. So for any manufacturer downstream making a car, a dishwasher, industrial equipment, whatever these higher input costs, they just cascade through their whole production process.
It just keeps adding up.
Precisely. Ultimately, those increased costs for the steel and aluminum components, even if they're only part of the final product, they're going to push up the end prices that consumers pay.
Yeah. So yeah, the wallet definitely takes a direct hit there. But beyond just the price tag for consumers, How are businesses themselves reacting, on a day-to-day level, especially with these complex global supply chains they manage?
Oh, the supply chains are absolutely having to adjust, often dramatically. Picture this. You're a manufacturer, you rely on imported steel or aluminum.
Okay.
Suddenly, you might need to completely overhaul your sourcing strategies, your procurement plans.
A huge undertaking.
It really is.
Yeah.
And for the folks moving the goods, the shippers, they're navigating entirely new cargo flows. Major trade partners like Mexico, Canada, Brazil, top suppliers of steel and aluminum to the U.S., they're feeling significant pressure.
How much pressure?
Well, for instance, Mexico estimates something like 4.7% of its total exports are now potentially at risk because of these tariffs.
Wow, that's substantial for their economy.
It is. And then you see other dynamics, like the UK managed to secure a tariff rate quota, basically an exemption, up to a certain volume.
Ah, so some countries get carve-outs.
Exactly. And that just shows how these exemptions can really shift trade patterns around, creating, winners and losers in the global market.
Right.
And then there's the increased scrutiny from Customs and Border Protection, the CBP.
Right.
They're really zooming in on documentation, especially those crucial country of smelt and cast declarations for aluminum.
Smelt and cast.
Yeah.
That's basically proving where the metal was originally made.
Precisely. Where it was first melted and poured, not just where it was last processed or formed into a part. Get that documentation wrong.
Problems.
Big problems, delays, fines, the whole 9 yards.
It really sounds like compliance just became a whole lot more complicated and a lot more critical.
Absolutely critical.
Now, this expanded list, it wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It actually followed petitions from major U.S. steelmakers like Cleveland-Cliffs and Nucor.
That's right. There was industry pressure.
And the administration naturally framed this as a necessary step to, quote, revitalize U.S. domestic steel and aluminum industries. But, every policy has its downsides, right? Where might this strategy actually fall short, or maybe even backfire, beyond just the obvious cost increases we talked about?
Yeah, the trade-offs are definitely significant. Look, the policy is undeniably a strategic bet on boosting U.S. industrial resilience. That's the stated goal.
Right. Make more stuff here.
It's exactly. However, if domestic capacity, the ability of U.S. producers to make enough steel and aluminum, doesn't scale up fast enough to meet this now escalated demand,
Then what?
then we're likely looking at bottlenecks, shortages, even higher costs because demand outstrips supply, and potentially slowed output across various sectors of the economy that use these metals.
So trying to fix one problem might create others.
It's a distinct possibility.
Yeah.
And for many businesses, just the sheer uncertainty of this whole evolving trade landscape, it becomes a kind of tax in itself.
An uncertainty tax. How does that work?
Well, think about it. Maybe you're a small manufacturer. You might hold off on buying that new piece of machinery because you just can't accurately forecast what your steel costs are going to be in 6 months or a year.
Okay, I see. You hesitate to invest.
Right. And that delayed investment, that can stifle growth, maybe even slow down job creation. It genuinely complicates their ability to do long-term planning, to manage their procurement strategies effectively.
That delayed investment is a really powerful example of a sort of hidden cost there. So for businesses, especially those importing goods that are now covered, what are the most critical, actionable insights? What do they absolutely need to be doing right now? We touched on compliance.
Yeah, let's dive deeper there because it's paramount. For shippers, number 1, audit your HTSUS classifications immediately.
HTSUS, that's the harmonized tariff schedule, the code for every product.
Exactly. It's the classification system that dictates which tariffs apply to which products. Getting it right is absolutely crucial. The penalties for misclassification can be severe. We're talking massive fines, goods getting held up at customs, maybe even seized.
Okay, so job 1 is check those codes.
Job 1. Importers really need to cross-check their product lists against the official CBP guidance. Or, frankly, better yet, work with a licensed customs broker. They live and breathe this stuff. That's the fastest way to confirm the impact.
Got it. What else?
Documentation. We mentioned the smelt cast declarations for aluminum. Those need to be spot on. Accurate, non-negotiable. CBP is definitely tightening audits on those.
Okay, dot the I's, cross the T's on paperwork.
Absolutely. And looking ahead, there's a new window opening in September for submitting requests to include more products under these Section 232 tariffs.
So this list could grow even more.
It could. Which means businesses need really robust monitoring systems in place. They've got to track future announcements because, further categories could potentially be added at any time.
Constant vigilance. And what about managing the actual costs? Any practical advice there?
Yeah, some practical things. Meticulously check your invoices for any new tariff additions. Don't just assume they're correct. Also, talk directly to your suppliers. Ask them about their plans for handling these new tariff costs. Are they absorbing them, passing them on?
Have those conversations.
Definitely. And finally, it might be time to seriously explore U.S.-based suppliers if relying on overseas sourcing just becomes too expensive or too uncertain to sustain.
Makes sense. And just quickly, what about the logistics folks, the carriers, the freight providers moving all these goods around? How does this hit their operations?
They should really anticipate some uneven cargo flows. We might see imports of these tariff-heavy items like appliances and auto parts potentially drop, while conversely, shipments from countries that have exemptions or maybe products not subject to the tariffs, those might rise as supply chains shift and find workarounds.
So volatility for them too.
Yeah, flexibility is going to be absolutely key for them in their pricing, in allocating capacity. And ultimately, providing real-time visibility to their customers, the shippers, about costs and routing impacts. That's going to be incredibly valuable. Shippers are desperate for clarity right now.
Clarity and chaos, basically. Yeah. Okay, so let's try to pull this all together for you, our listener. What does this all mean? We've taken a deep dive into how these expanded steel and aluminum tariffs, which, remember, just went into effect August 18th, 2025, how they're creating these cost-push inflationary pressures. We heard these tariffs now affect an estimated staggering $320 billion worth of imports.
A huge figure.
Which likely means higher prices for you on everything from appliances in your home to the components in your car. We've also explored the really profound impact on global supply chains.
Yeah, major trade partners like Mexico, Canada, Brazil are feeling that pressure.
Right. And at the same time, there's increased scrutiny from Customs and Border Protection, especially on that critical documentation like the smelt and cast declarations.
And we also touched on the strategic bet, really, behind these policies that push for U.S. industrial resilience.
Right, the revitalization goal.
But as we discussed, it's not without significant trade-offs. Potential bottlenecks if domestic supply can't keep up, strained international relationships, and that uncertainty tax hanging over businesses trying to make long-term plans.
Yeah, it's clear that the path to U.S. industrial strength, at least as envisioned by these specific policies, it's definitely fraught with some complex challenges and these wide-ranging ripple effects.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the final outcome of this strategic bet, it's still very much unfolding. We don't know the ending yet.
Still playing out.
It really depends fundamentally on how quickly global supply chains can adapt, whether domestic suppliers can actually meet this escalated demand without creating whole new bottlenecks, and, frankly, how successfully businesses can navigate all the compliance while somehow containing these rising costs.
A lot of ifs.
A lot of ifs. And here's maybe a final thought to consider. With that next round for inclusion requests opening up in September.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
It's entirely possible that further categories could soon be added to this list, expanding the reach of these tariffs even wider.
So this isn't necessarily the end of the story.
Not at all. It really suggests that this landscape of trade policy and all its ripple effects on the goods and services that you rely on every single day, it's not static. It's continuously evolving.
Always changing.
So the question becomes, what does this ongoing evolution mean for adaptability, for businesses, for consumers, for the economy, and how might future adjustments continue to reshape our world, perhaps in ways we haven't even really considered yet?
For more insights like these, don't forget to subscribe to Logistics Pulse on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.